Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in a year 2021. We are dealing with day 172, 1 Kings chapter 10 and 11, and 2 Chronicles 9. When we look up, when we start here on 1 Kings 10, we have the visit of the Queen of Sheba, and we discover here the reason why she came to visit him. Just listen to this in verse 1. When the Queen of Sheba heard reports about Solomon, due to the Lord's name, she came to test him with riddles. So we see here right away the thing that the Lord wanted to do, which was to glorify himself through Israel, through the king, through the prosperity that he was bringing to them. We see that this is what's happened here with the Queen of Sheba. She's coming because of this, because she's coming because of all the reports that she's heard that Yahweh has done for Solomon. And she decided that she'd come with riddles just to test this supposed wisdom that she's heard about. Try them out. And we see here in verse 2-3, after she arrived, she told Solomon everything that was on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too difficult for him to answer. Not really sure how difficult the riddles were. We're not given those kind of details, but nonetheless, there wasn't anything that he wasn't able to answer. And we know that this is the way it is with the anointing of the Lord, is for even things that we don't have knowledge about, he turns around and he gives us a way to be able to answer people. Whether you operate in that or not, this is how he is. You can deny that completely, but it doesn't take away from the fact that that's what he does. And that's why you find some people who are willing to believe, who are willing to operate in that, serving him at higher levels, because they're not denying him in anything. Then we see here in verse 8-9, your people and these servants who continually serve you and get to listen to your wisdom are truly happy. Bless the Lord your God, because he was pleased to place you on Israel's throne. Because the Lord loved Israel with an eternal love, the Lord made you king to uphold justice and righteousness. So it's not a praising of Solomon. This is a praising of the Lord for what he has done for Solomon, and a recognition that he raised Solomon up in this way in order to bless Israel. That's pretty amazing. That's an absolute fantastic perspective to have in everything in life. It's and this is what happens to surrendered lives. This is what happens when we operate in what the Lord has given us to operate in, and that's how it's supposed to be, folks. In verse 13, we see an example of Solomon's generosity. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba everything she wanted and all that she had asked for, in addition to what he had already given her from his own personal funds. Then she and her servants returned to her homeland. So she came bearing gifts, which is a part of the culture. You don't go and see somebody for advice. You don't go and see somebody because you need help without bringing a gift. That's part of their culture. It's still part of some cultures. Sometimes people like myself find it very uneasy when we go to do something for somebody that we consider a friend and the family wants to give us money. Myself personally, I don't want them to think that I'm for hire. I'm here as their friend. I'm here as their brother. I'm here to support them. It's the way we're raised. I was not raised in a culture where those gifts are just a normal thing. At the same time, refusing them in a culture where it is a normal thing, it can also be dangerous. So these are things that we need to be aware of. But we see Solomon's generosity here. And Here's something that's important. I've heard this so many times from different sources when it comes to our finances. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Don't rely upon one source of income. You can have a base income, and the things that you want to supplement it with. I've heard some people say you should have up to 4 sources, maybe 5 sources of income. And we're not talking about large things of income, but your basic income will cover all your bills, and then you have other sources, especially things like investments and that sort of stuff that will work for you without you having to work. And this is what Solomon's really talking about. He talks about this in Proverbs, but we see it in practical form here in 1 Kings 10. Solomon received an annual income of 666 kikars of gold, not including income from the traders, the merchants, and their profits, all the Arabian kings and the officials of the land. Plus, he's working with other kings, and they have other investments and things that are going on, and he has quite a diverse type of income that is coming in, which puts him on a solid basis, which comes from the wisdom that the Lord has given to him. In verses 18 and 19, just something I want to point out here. Artistry makes its way in all kinds of different applications. David was an artist when it came to music, when it came to songwriting. Solomon was an artist in the way of design. When you see what he did with the temple, what he did for his own palace and the palace of his wife, we see here that the king also made a large ivory throne and covered it with pure gold. 6 steps led up to the throne, and the back of the throne was rounded at the top. 2 lions stood beside the armrests on both sides of the throne. It was supposed to look majestic, and that was the intention. But in this passage, it goes on about all of his other designs and what he did. And we need to stop and just consider that he's an artist, and this is the way his art works out. Some people's artistry is dance. Some people's finances. Some people it's administration. There's just an artistry to what they do, a creative thing that they do. Some of us would see it almost like a law when it comes to administration, but if you've ever been involved in that field, you appreciate those people who use their imagination to accomplish things that some of us couldn't even imagine doing. So here in verse 23 to 25, we see that Yahweh was faithful. King Solomon far exceeded all the earth's kings in wealth and wisdom, and so the whole earth wanted an audience with Solomon in order to hear his God-given wisdom. Year after year, they came with tribute, objects of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. So this is the pinnacle. This is the top. Israel will never achieve this again. This is just an amazing thing, and it's a result of Yahweh's faithfulness to the promises that he gave to David about Solomon, but also the promises he gave to Solomon about Solomon. And all of this that is happening is because of the blessing of the Lord, the anointing of the Lord, the promises of the Lord, and not because Solomon was able to do all of this for himself. But unfortunately, it goes downhill. And it goes downhill because Solomon was also involved in things that he shouldn't have been involved in, and some of his decisions were not good whatsoever. And we see that his illegal foreign wives turned his heart. It wasn't just women. Okay, people say that it was his weakness of women. It's not that. It's he also went against the instructions of the Lord, and he was not supposed to intermarry. He was not supposed to marry outside of Israel for the very reason that of what happened to him. Yahweh had said that don't marry outside because your wives will turn your heart from me and towards their God. So as Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods. He wasn't committed to the Lord his God with all his heart, as was his father David. Solomon followed Astarte, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was evil in the Lord's eyes and wasn't completely devoted to the Lord like his father David. And the promise that was given to Solomon that if he followed in the ways of the Lord, that he would have long life. And we know that Solomon died at 58, 59. So yeah. Yes, as sure as the promises are, when they come with conditions, the Lord will also, he will be faithful to everything he said, including the consequences of not following through. So the third meeting that Solomon has with the Lord is not pleasant. The Lord said to Solomon, because you have done all this instead of keeping my covenant and my laws that I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. Even so, on account of your father David, I won't do it during your lifetime. Now, notice there, it's not because of Solomon, but this goes back to the promise that he gave to David. This is on account of your father David. I won't do it during your lifetime. Because he had made promises to David. I will tear the kingdom out of your son's hands. Moreover, I won't tear away the entire kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son on account of my servant David. Again, not because of Solomon, but because of David, and on account of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. And then Solomon, the end of Solomon's life was, unfortunately, was not spent in peace. It was spent in conflict. In two in particular here. So the Lord raised up an opponent for Solomon, Hadad, the Edomite, from the royal line of Edom. And then in verse 23, God raised up another opponent for Solomon, Rezon, Eliadah's son, who had escaped from Zobah's king Hadadezer. Okay, and then there was the enemy from within. So he ended up the end of his life. He had such a peaceful reign. If he had only followed the instructions, it would have ended peacefully. But those two external enemies and then the enemy within. Now Nebat's son Jeroboam was an Ephraimite from Zeredah. His mother's name was Zerah. She was a widow. Although he was one of Solomon's own officials, Jeroboam fought against the king. And so then we have the promise that was given to Jeroboam in verses 38, 39. If you listen to all that I command and walk it in my ways, if you do what is right in my eyes, keeping my laws, my commands, just as my servant David did, then I will be with you and I will build you a lasting dynasty, just as I did for David. I will give you Israel. I will humble David's descendants by means of all this, though not forever. Yeah, so that's what he's going to give to Jeroboam. He chose Jeroboam to be the one who's going to take over the majority of the greater majority of Israel. They will carry title of Israel, and David's descendants will have rule over Judah and Benjamin. But that's how it was supposed to play out. So here we have in verses 42 and 43, the amount of time Solomon ruled over all Israel and Jerusalem was 40 years. Then Solomon lay down with his ancestors. He was buried in his father David's city, and Rehoboam, his son, succeeded him as king. And it's sad. Very sad that he died so young. He should have had at least another 20 years. He could have served Israel. And it's sad that he ended up in conflict instead of peace. And it's sad that he ended up estranged with Yahweh. Cautionary tale. Okay, you guys be blessed today, and don't let yourself be distracted, and don't move away from the Lord. He is your life source, and we need to remember that. Be blessed, be used by him today, be available, and enjoy his company. Love you guys. Thanks for being with me, and we'll catch up tomorrow.